Welcome back to this week's Park Rapids Heartland Lakes Area Fishing Report brought to you by Delaney's Outdoors. My name's TJ Erickson and I'm with TJ's Guide Service. I've been out a lot the last week and a half. I've been chasing pike, I've been chasing walleyes, I've been chasing panfish, both crappies and bluegills. I've been out chasing a little bit of everything that swims. But before we talk too much about fishing, I want to talk ice conditions. I've been seeing lots of questions on social media from friends all over the place about what is the ice, how thick is the ice, and that is varying so much. I understand that not everybody can be out checking ice conditions because it's time consuming driving around to all the different lakes. So that's why I went out yesterday, checked half a dozen lakes, both big lakes and small lakes, and here's what I found. Pretty much all the lakes in the area are capped over, but there is not a lot of safe ice all the way around. I checked pretty close to shore, pretty close to the accesses, and I was seeing maybe around 3 inches, but that was only about 20, maybe 10 feet out. I didn't go much farther than that. So on those big lakes, I'm gonna wait a little bit, let that ice build up. On the bright side, there wasn't a lot of snow on those big lakes. The smaller lakes have some snow, but since the bigger lakes froze over a little bit later, they don't have nearly as much snow. So that's gonna help put on more ice on those bigger lakes. So like I said, I was seeing about 3 inches close to shore on some of those bigger lakes. So they're getting closer, but they're not quite there. What I saw from a lot of the smaller lakes is anywhere from that 6 to 9 inches. So those are getting plenty safe to walk on and even to bring a snowmobile or an ATV on. But again, be very cautious when you go out because it can vary so much depending on the area of the lake that you're fishing, whether it has springs. I would suggest to have your spud bar to check. I would suggest having your ice picks, a float suit or a life jacket, and fish with a friend. So walking out with a friend, that way you can be completely safe, especially in these early ice conditions. Looking forward, the weather conditions aren't super conducive to making ice. We're seeing anywheres in those 20s, even up to the 30s. I think one day next week might be in the 40s. So we're not gonna be putting on ice super fast. But the good news is the bigger lakes don't have snow and the smaller lakes are already fishable. So now let's talk fishing. Like I said, I've been out chasing a little bit of everything. And what I can tell you on the walleye side of things, some of my favorite areas to target this time of year are shallow, weedy flats where there's some good weeds still, especially if there's a little bit of green. Finding some of those areas and some of those drop-offs that are just adjacent to those green, weedy flats. Both some of those walleyes and pike are gonna be cruising around there looking for bait, looking for their next meal. When I'm fishing those areas, I love to use spoons. They have some action, they can trigger fish, they can draw fish into the area. So that's one of my go-tos almost all winter, are lots of different types of spoons. There's lots of good ones out there. Delaney's has a ton in stock, so come on in, check that out. And the other thing that I'll do is I will use a set line, whether it's an iFish Pro, a Finicky Fooler, lots of different types of even traditional tip-ups. Delaney's has those in stock as well. One of the ways that I like to use my set line is with a small tungsten jig, just sitting down there with a minnow hooked right underneath the jaw out through the head. Get it sitting nice and horizontal, and those fish just love to see that little bit of action on those minnows on the dead stick. The other thing that I'm going to do is I will use a smaller octopus hook with a split shot on it, maybe about 1 foot or 2 feet up, depending on how big the minnow is and how much you want it moving around. Onto the panfish side of things, we're seeing a little bit of panfish in a couple different areas. The first area is, again, into those green weeds. Anytime you can find good weeds this time of year, you're going to find fish. Panfish, crappies, and bluegills are both going to be around those weeds, but we're also seeing some of those panfish, some of those crappies, some of those bluegills out into some of the basin. Not always are they going to be right out in the middle. Sometimes they might be on that drop off on the way out to the deepest part of the basin, or every once in a while they'll cruise out into that deep basin, especially midday. Sometimes you'll see towards the evening they'll move up a little bit closer to those edges, or maybe even a little bit into some of that shallower water. But we're seeing a lot of panfish over those basins, sometimes tight to bottom, but sometimes you can see big schools on your electronics moving through, especially early in the morning and late at night. One of my favorite things to use when I'm targeting the panfish is a small tungsten jig with a small plastic, or if you can find the clam silkies, they are phenomenal and they last a long time. So lots of information in this week's fishing report. Please be safe if you are going out on the ice. Stop into Delaney's. They can give you some tips, give you some tricks, give you some pointers on things to go and things to use. They have lots of bait in stock, all the lures and different things that I talked about in this video. So stop on in, check them out. They will get you headed in the right direction. And as always, be safe and good luck.